Muscle growth is a common training goal. We lift consistently and keep our nutrition in check in the hopes of developing lean quality muscle. But for many people, it's not exactly clear how fast they can expect to gain muscle. If you look on social media, you sometimes see these crazy 4 or 8 week muscle transformations, which simply have created unrealistic expectations. Now, that's not to say you can't make significant muscle growth progress in the short term, but as with any fitness goal, patience plays a key role here. So in today's video, I will discuss how fast you can realistically expect to gain muscle. I will walk you through 4 variables that influence your rate of muscle gain so that you can have a more clear idea of what is realistic to expect. First, how fast you can gain muscle will of course for some part depend on your genetics. You may have seen this in your environment as well. Some people may get great results after training for just a few months, whereas other people will train with the same approach for a year and see little progress out of that same approach. There's interesting research in this area as well. In one study, the researchers gathered 585 volunteers and they all followed the same workout program. But as you can see in this figure, the muscle growth results varied greatly per individual. Even though us humans are physiologically very similar, we do have differences in our genetic makeup that can influence things like how fast you can build muscle. One genetic variable that can influence your muscle growth results is joint size. In one study, it was found that having wider joints like wider wrists, knees, and shoulders is associated with having greater muscle mass. And this makes sense. If you have wider wrists, then your body structure will be able to support more mass than someone with smaller wrists or smaller knees, so there's a greater capacity for muscle gain. Even something like your birth weight can impact your capacity to gain muscle. Individuals with a higher birth weight tend to have greater muscle mass in the future. I mentioned these genetic variables to point out that there are things out of our control that can impact how fast you can gain muscle, which only really emphasizes that you shouldn't compare your journey with that of someone else. Because we have genetic differences, you should not compare your rate of muscle growth progress with that of your favorite fitness YouTuber. To throw a cliche statement out there, it is you versus you. Focus on yourself and realizing your potential. Now that we have covered genetics, let's also look into another variable that can impact your rate of muscle gain, and that is your training experience. And in this section of the video, I will also give you a general guideline on what you can typically expect in terms of rate of muscle gain, depending on your training experience. When it comes to lifting weights, the concept of diminishing returns very much holds true. When you start with training for the first time, your lifting sessions are quite a big shock to the body. You go from not really challenging your muscles in everyday life to now putting great demands on your muscles via weight training. Because of this sudden shock, the body responds by gaining muscle at an accelerated pace, and this is why you see that most people tend to gain a good amount of muscle in their first 2 to 3 months of training. This especially holds true if you come from a training break. If you used to carry more muscle mass in the past, then your body has the capacity to regain that muscle at an accelerated pace once you get back into consistent training. But as you advance in your training and stay consistent, the rate at which you can gain muscle typically slows down. Just think about it, what's a bigger shock to the body? Going from not exercising to now all of a sudden training hard 3 times per week, or going from training 3 times per week to maybe 4 times per week? The first steps in your fitness journey are more substantial, so the adaptive responses that come out of it are also greater. So we should essentially expect muscle growth to slow down as you become more advanced in your workouts. We can also recognize this in theoretical models created by researchers in the field. A popular model created by Alan Aragon supports that muscle growth slows down the further you advance in your fitness journey. This same model gives us good general guidelines on how fast most people can expect to gain muscle. Say we have a 150-pound individual in his first year of training. If you do everything right, as a maximum you might be able to gain around 22 pounds of muscle. But in that second year, things slow down because you are more advanced and now you can only gain 11 pounds in that year. In year 3, again, there's a slower rate of progress because you are more advanced and now you only gain 5 pounds of muscle that year. And the example given is like the ideal scenario in which you optimize training and nutrition throughout the 3 years. If we look at things realistically, most people will have vacations, busy working weeks, personal circumstances, and things of that nature that might sometimes result in a less consistent training week, which is part of life. But it also means that instead of gaining 22 pounds of muscle that first year, maybe you gain 15 or 17 pounds of muscle. So take this model as a general muscle growth guideline, but also consider that genetics and your rate of consistency impacts exactly how much muscle you can gain. Now that we have a good guideline for how fast you can exactly gain muscle, let's look into how we can actually realize this muscle growth potential. Because just working out isn't enough, we need to be thoughtful about how we structure our training and nutrition to properly support muscle growth. Starting with training, let's take a step back and think about what muscle growth actually is. The human body cares about survival. It won't build new muscle unless it's really needed. Especially because muscle has an energy cost. 1 pound of muscle costs 6 to 10 calories per day to maintain. If your body can avoid this energy cost, then it will, and that's why you also don't see people accidentally walking around with a lot of muscle mass. If you want muscle development, you need to consistently challenge your muscles. This means focusing on progressive overload in your training. We don't just train for a pump, we train to get stronger. It's one thing to get into the gym and do a workout, but we also want to improve performance over time so that your muscles are imposed to greater demands, and in that way will adapt by growing bigger and stronger. I have other videos that dive into more detail on how you can properly set up a training routine based on your experience level, so I will put that in the description below. Next to training, we of course also need proper nutrition to support the development of new muscle and allow you to train hard in the gym. And this can sometimes be tricky if also losing fat is one of your goals. Because we know that to lose fat you need a calorie deficit, which is eating fewer calories than your body expends in a day, but this same calorie deficit reduces your ability to gain muscle. This is not to say that you can't gain muscle though, especially for beginner trainees. It is possible to expect muscle growth and fat loss at the same time. The muscle growth progress will just be slower. So if you're planning to combine your muscle growth and fat loss goals into one body recomposition phase, then I would also expect a slower rate of muscle gain compared to the earlier figures that I showed in the Alan Aragon muscle growth model. If losing fat is less of a priority for you and you are more focused on gaining muscle, then spending the majority of your time at maintenance calories or in a slight calorie surplus is helpful for gaining muscle. Because muscle growth is an energy-intensive process, having a higher calorie intake can help your muscle growth goals by giving your body more energy to utilize towards the creation of new muscle mass. As discussed in one of my previous videos, I suggest a 1:2 ratio for most people looking to build muscle. For every month that you spend in a calorie deficit, have at the very least 2 months spent at maintenance or in a lean bulk. And for more details on this, I refer you to one of my previous videos about lean bulking that is linked in the description as well. Lastly, I would like to discuss a perspective related to muscle growth, because every time I speak about muscle growth and give you practical techniques and tips, I speak with a tone of maximizing results. And I do this because I of course want you to get the best results possible. But it's worth mentioning that there is no rush. Your fitness journey is not a race. Your fitness is literally something that you carry with you your entire life. And in life, it's sometimes tough to maintain 100% consistency or optimization at all times. There will be periods where maybe you can only realize 70, 80 or 90% of your muscle growth potential, and that is okay. Whether you build 10 or 13 pounds of muscle this year, it's not really that big of a deal. If you are a bodybuilder looking to win a competition, then of course it's different. But I think most of us want to be healthy, feel good, look good, and make this a lifestyle. Taking a long-term perspective and embracing the process will get you there. And that was all for today's video. I hope this gives you more clarity on what you can realistically expect when it comes to how fast you can gain muscle. If you found this video helpful, then leave me a thumbs up. Also subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video.